Welcome to the Beauties and Beasties podcast with Alex and Sean.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm good. How the devil are you?
I'm doing very, very well. I've had a lovely, productive, and enjoyable week. Did some field biology, which is always a bit of a hoot. I'm absolutely snowed under with projects and research projects at the moment, which is good. It's nice. It's nice to see. And dear Lord, are we playing the competition to get the first comment in? All right, there we go. First comment goes to Niall. He's already in there. There we go. Woo. So yeah, people are getting quick off the mark. 7:01. That is good. People are raring to go there. I'm absolutely loving that. So yeah, what have you been up to this week then, Sean?
We have tidied the office up. We've bought a new computer, which is coming on Monday for the guys. And I have an addition to the office today. Doesn't come very often, but he said, "Do you want to see him?"
Yeah. Let's see what the addition is.
Come.
Oh,
Old boy,
So,
come out for the day, didn't he? Come to work for the day. Right, come in, so go on.
so for those who are not watching this, listening on Spotify and don't have the video to hand, Sean has brought a dog with him.
Yeah, he's my old boy. He'll be. You're supposed to know how old they are. He'll be at least 10, a little bit older. I've had him from a pup. Can't remember when I got him, but he's as my best friend says to us, he is a Christian. He's just a gentleman of a creature. Great with kids, just perfect. Yeah, so he's come to work for the day, and we've had a lovely day sitting in the office. So yeah. Your week quickly? How was your week?
It was very good. I'm trying to think. It was just a week of doing lots of little bits and bobs. But actually, I'll tell you one of the things we did today, which is quite interesting. So basically, as I said last week, I've taken on a new member of staff, taken on a new lab tech, and I'm always very keen on sort of like just if I've got a lab tech, putting them to work, putting them to do all kinds of things. And one of the things that we're doing just to make sure that there's always some kind of science going on. So I've long held this belief. Let me backtrack a little bit. Some of you might know a couple of this time last year, I started doing two studies informally. One was a decomp study and one was a predation study of rats. So number one, the decomp study is I solidly believe that over winter, because it's cold, because there are less insects, rats and mice, carcasses of rats and mice, will decompose significantly slower in this weather. With this, though, at this time of year, a lot of scavenging animals are going to be absolutely on top form, looking for dead bodies to pick up, because of course they need the energy, they need the food, and so they'll readily pick things up. But of course, when do we do the majority of our rat work over in farms and in rural areas? It's going to be around about this time, isn't it? So I suddenly thought, hang on, is there a worry where we're going to be killing rats are going to be dying, and they're going to be preserved by the elements for longer, and therefore pose a greater risk to the environment because they're simply just going to be kicking around for longer? So this was a hypothesis. I put it to a bit of an experiment last year, but not a rigorous one because I was busy doing other things. But now I've got the new starter, so I've passed this over to her. So today we made a whole load of mesh cages. We put a load of rats in them and a load of cameras looking over them. So two parts of this study. Number one is we're going to measure to see how long. So three rats in three locations a month will go down onto the floor, and we'll measure to see how quickly they decompose. And then again, within about 15 feet of these rats in cages, we've got another whole load of rats on the floor with cameras looking at them to see how quickly they get picked up by scavenging animals. And the assumption is if the rats get picked up before the animal in the cage decomposes, then there's a risk. and vice versa. So in summer, I imagine the rats in the cages to decompose within a matter of days, and therefore produce a lower risk to scavenging animals. But at this time of year, so we're basically doing that little bit of research to see, do we, as the pest management industry, or does the farming community? Oh, hang on, my headset's turned off.
You sound fine. You sound absolutely fine.
Oh yeah, there we go. So let's reassess that. There we go. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the was just to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a pest management community, and if we need to turn up more often during these times, to actually try and figure out what that window of danger would be.
Can I make one more suggestion of something that should be monitored? Well, I know you will monitor, but I think will become, because I don't know why I haven't thought of it, but when you say it like that, it's absolutely clear that that's probably going to be correct. But also, everything in the winter is starving.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's very little young for things to prey on. Everything breeds in the summer, so you like life cycles of birds. There's no young birds. There's no young this. There's no young that. There's no longer that abundance of food. So not only is that rat more likely to be poisoned because it's coming into the farm, it's more likely to last longer, and it's more likely to be sought out. So you're probably right. Well, you've got to be right, don't you? I would think. The hypothesis is that we are absolutely at a far greater risk in the winter months than the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the thing is, if we know this, forearmed
as I was explaining it to you, it just came to us.
Well, exactly that. And I'm glad you had that good idea. I should do an experiment in order to see whether or not it works. But I think
put it on the list of thank yous.
But I mean, if we know this, then what we can do is we can go out. We can then sort of like what we plan on doing is you take the speed of decomp, and you divide it by the time it takes for that animal to be predated in the similar way, and you divide A by B, and if the number is less than 1, then it will have decomposed before it would have been eaten. If that number is greater than 1, then at that point, the higher that number is, the greater the risk. So what we'll try and find is, is it 3? Is it going to? Could you eaten that rat 3 times over in the time it took it to decompose, or could you be eaten that rat 5 or 6 times over? So that's what we plan on doing, and it's just one of many little experiments that we've got going on, that we plan on just using the facilities. If I'm going to be sat on a farm surrounded by wildlife, let's make it work for us, guys. Let's actually see what's going to go on with it. So you asked what I did with my week. I just basically set weird and wonderful tasks for that. Neil, are there any figures as to whether birds of prey scavengers take live prey versus dead prey? The problem with that, there's absolutely going to be data out there for that. Yeah, and a bit of forensic entomology. Actually, let me come back to that one in a second, because yes, we have put a little caveat on these tests to see what's going on. Don't forget to pay your tax bills, guys. Well, that doesn't seem to factor in. I'm not sure what that's got to do with anything. But with that, yes, back to the other ones. There will be figures out there. However, it's going to be very difficult for me to validate those figures, because I'm not going to be able to put a little live rat in a box outside. That would be A, immoral, and B, wildly unpractical. But we'll see as to what the predation values are for that. LD rating 50 for the same as a fox as a dog? I'd imagine it is. They're very closely related to one another. They're members of the canine family, so I'd imagine that it would be largely body weight dependent at that point. What most foxes are about 10 kilos max ish. They're not massive. I'm not entirely sure what the maximum weight of a fox is, but I imagine it would be the same risk as you would see to a spaniel or something like that. They're about of equivalent size. And finally, Niall, you said bit of a forensic entomology thrown in. Yes. So each of the decomp cages has a little sticky fly trap that we're going to put in there, and we'll take the sticky fly trap out after 48 hours just to see what gets stuck on it after 48 hours. The assumption being within 48 hours, most insects should have found it over that time. So hey ho, there we go. Does anyone want to expand on what we mean by paying your tax bills, guys? Oh no, there's that time of year, isn't it, for tax returns, isn't it? Sorry, this is why I'm confused. I'm a limited company, so my,
Yeah.
my tax returns are
Assessment risk.
quarterly. Yeah.
So this evening we have a man who I don't think anyone have ever heard of him in the pest control industry, will they?
No, I think well, he's a
Never
bit of a
heard of him
long
before. I
shot
know he
tonight.
can. So yeah. So we went for someone who no one ever heard of.
Yep.
No, I'm only joking. Most people here, well, everyone I'm guessing will have heard of John. Lots of people would have met him or been trained by him. I had some sort of interaction with John over the however many years, but that's his story. So with that, let's bring him on and let's have a bit of a natter with him. And here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Sage.
Hello, hello, hello.
Come
How are
on,
you doing,
John.
sir?
Tell us who you are, what you're about. Give us a bit of a rundown of what is John Sage inside and outside of pest control.
Who am I? I'm a marine engineer if that counts.
Makes perfect sense. I'm a marine biologist, so
There you
yes,
go.
it would seem that most people in the pest management industry, at least 2 out of 3, it would seem, come from a marine background.
So a marine biologist does nasty things to small animals, whereas a marine engineer does nasty things to young ladies of the night in Singapore. But we won't go into that too deeply, I'm sure.
I don't know. I think that needs some circling back at some point later on today. Absolutely. But no, come on, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get from marine engineer to pest manager? What was that journey?
I left the sea a long time ago. I did 12 years, man and boy, so to speak, and I went into private industry. Specifically, I worked for Her Majesty's government, doing all sorts of nasty things associated with engineering in some way. But my last posting, I work for special services. No, not the SAS, although on my last posting, I looked after the SAS headquarters in London. But my last posting, I was at Chelsea Barracks, living in married quarters with a wife and a family. Youngest daughter was born whilst we were there. And because I was the resident engineer, I got involved with all sorts of things. Not just at Chelsea Barracks, but the whole of London district, to the point whereby one Christmas I was called out to 10 Downing Street because rats had chewed the cable to the Christmas tree that was outside the front door. Could I do something about the rats? When I finished with the government to go and work for private industries, the company I was working for, they acquired what is today called a facilities management company. Mm-hmm. And I was doing my bit, which was all this highfalutin electronic engineering and bits and pieces. But my boss knew that I used to go out hunting, fishing and shooting, and had done so since I was a wee boy in Scotland with my grandfather. And it was a bit of a joke. Don't call Sagey on a Monday or a Friday because you'll be out in the field somewhere with a gun or fishing or something like that. But as part of this move into facilities management, what it's called today, the company took over the facilities management of some very, very large clients like IBM, Digital, if anyone's old enough to remember them. We even, and even today we still do it, the company, we supplied everything to NASA other than the astronauts and the scientists. No rockets could be launched without the company doing something. And it was growing that way in the UK. Well, one of the aspects of it, as part of this contract that they had achieved through acquisition, was pest control. And because of my supposed background in pest control, because I used to go and shoot things, and also because of my financial acumen, they said, can you take over and do something about this pest control on these sites? Because we're spending a lot of money and we've got no paperwork. We don't know where it's going. We just get these bills every quarter from a very large company, no names, no pack drills. And we don't know what it's for. We know nothing at all about it. So you're the guy that knows all about it. And so I looked into it and found out that, and this is going back a long time, 1994, 95. And we were paying this very large company just under £6 million a year for pest control.
Ooh.
And my boss, the managing director, he said to me, we've got to reduce that cost. And you're the guy that knows all about it. I said, I don't. I haven't got a bloody clue. We'll send you on some training. So that's probably going to help immensely. So they sent me off to college to do a degree in animal management, which was about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. It really didn't help. But if you've got a horse that needs giving birth, or you need a bit of help with lambing, I'm the boy for that sort of thing. But as for the normal bits, I haven't got a bloody clue. And this was very quickly identified. And a great friend of mine, Dr. Richard Burton, he said, you need to come to us and we'll train you. And I thought, that's the last thing I need, another 6 months sitting in the bloody classroom. He said, no. He said, it only takes 4 or 5 days. And I did my RSPH. Back in those days, it was a diploma. And I did one of those. But it wasn't in the name of RSPH. I think it was RSH.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that. That was before my time, but I remember all of the crossovers with the BPCA helping write the syllabus for the RSPH, which then turned into, that was then the level 2 award as opposed to the level 2 diploma. And yeah.
So I did that, and then obviously I updated it. I did the certificate in the end. Goodness knows how long ago I did that. And I was doing all sorts of pest control, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'd shift companies, but I was still doing a little bit of pest control on the side. And I was made redundant. And I thought, bugger, what do I do? So, because I'm a qualified teacher, and at that time being unemployed, you're able to work for 24 hours a week without losing your not redundancy payment, without using your unemployment benefit, job seekers allowance, or whatever it's called. And so a couple of phone calls later, I was lecturing at Gloucester University, just to earn a few quid and keep me well occupied. Then I suddenly started to get people saying, can you phone me up? I'm going to phone you up. I need help with a bit of this and a bit of that to do with pest control. And then Richard Burton phoned me up and he said, you need to start delivering pest control qualifications. And at the same
time, when was this?
Pardon?
How long ago was this? How long ago after 95, 96 was this then?
This will be when I took over an official centre. It is about 12, 14 years ago.
So, sorry, 2012, you say?
In that sort of order. I can't remember exactly when. In the meantime, though, I'd also bought a franchise, which was brilliant. It was absolutely superb. It was just, what a great way of earning money. Until the franchise was bought out, the owner sold up and was bought out, and it all went ratchet. And I went into full-time pest control on my own and training as well. A bit of a tortuous route to get involved in it, but been associated with it for too many years, and I care to mention, really. And it's interesting to look at things today as to things as they were, say, 30 years ago. And because of my background with engineering and that sort of thing, or what they call at that time was building and civil engineering, I spent a great deal of time crawling around in Mr. Bazalgette's sewers in London, which was absolutely fascinating, and got involved in repairing them and coming up with all sorts of things. And it carried on to there. Once I found out, after the Adoption of Sewers Act, water companies had taken over sewers, but they weren't doing any drains. And that's where all our problems exist. So I started specialising in that. And I spend more time crawling around in drains than I probably spend doing anything else. It's good fun. You get to see everybody's poo. I've seen everybody's poo, I think. But it's great.
Is that actually good fun? Is that good fun?
I love it. I do. I really do. And I mean, I don't know. My wife, she says, "Why are you doing this?" Because I'm on a chemotherapy drug, but I'm also immunosuppressed. And if I get a cold, it makes man flu look like a runny nose. I mean, I'm really, really ill. And here I am crawling around in all this doo-doo, and coming in contact with the various diseases that rats carry. And I'm still here. I'm still going. And the only reason that is because of all the necessary precautions one has to take, not just with PPE, but with how you actually go ahead and do the jobs. And when I used to do assessments, I was doing a training for 3 different water companies, and I'd do assessments for them because I'm an NVQ assessor. And the number of times you see these guys getting a bit of a back thrush. They've got a jetting machine down a pipe and it's a little bit blocked, and they put it on a warp factor 5, and poof, there it all comes back all over their faces. And I'm thinking, well, that's why you wear a face shield. No, I'll be all right, you know. And it's all in it, you know. All that second-hand curry's not fun.
Oh my God, you really, after we've spoken at length here about drains before, but no one warned me for the Mount Vesuvius that is part of this. I mean, that sounds. You're not selling it to me, John. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm less and less enamored by the idea of getting into a drain the longer you tell this story. That is
what I really hope
hideous.
is going to happen, because I don't want you to do it. I want me to do it.
Yeah, there we go. The more people you put off the idea of drains, the more there is for you. No, that makes sense.
I did myself and my son-in-law, we were the stars of Dirty Britain for 2 episodes.
I thought it was Crime Watch.
Yeah, I've done that as well. And I said to the producer, "Why are you using us?" And they said, "Because we only found 2 companies in the United Kingdom that would work on drains and sewers and were also qualified in pest control. Lots and lots of pretenders to the throne, but they weren't qualified in pest control, and they wanted a holistic approach to film." And it wasn't just, I mean, the majority of it was drains and sewers. It was quite funny at one point, but it was out shooting rats, shooting geese, and all sorts of other things that went with it. And at that time, like I say, there was only 2 outfits that could do the work. And I don't mean shoving a camera up a bit of pipe. There's more to it than that. It's actually doing the repairs, fixing the pipes, doing the digging, lining them, patching them, putting in new chambers and all that lot. They just couldn't find the other companies that were qualified in pest control that would also do the necessary work in sewers. Now, that was probably 10 years ago now. I guess it's changed a wee bit. There's all sorts of people, pardon me, getting involved in drains, and more pest controllers are now realizing that a lot of these infestations are due to the fact of rats coming in underground, either through the drains or through the lintels around them.
It's really amazing, actually, how, as you say, it's probably been in the last 10 years, the attitude towards drains has shifted significantly in our industry to actually it being a real sort of talking point. And it's it's really great, isn't it? How these things kind of sneak up on you, these evolutions. What's changed the most in the last 10 years in pest management? Is have we got new tools? Have we got new things? No, we've just broadened our horizon as what we consider to be the problem. And that's how a lot of people have made a lot of money off this, isn't it? So it's really interesting, the paths that we take to get here, isn't it?
For sure. If you go back not very many years, and you wanted to buy a laptop, I remember the first laptop I had when I worked for a company called Glorious. We paid about $6,500 for it. Now, if you look at today, you can get a quite competent laptop free of charge when you sign a contract to buy a Galaxy phone. Things have gone down in price, and it's very similar in pest control. If you're going to go around and shove a load of boxes all over the place, not to say it's not right to do that, the customers are going to phone up. They're going to ask everybody else, how much are you going to charge to put down 15 boxes and check them once every net, whatever. And half the time it comes down to the lowest price wins. If everyone is offering the same, the only differentiator is the price. And
hang on. Let me just get what you're saying here. What you're saying is that by adding additional value to your service, you can command a higher price.
You most certainly can. You most certainly can. I could put my other hat on. There's an organisation called Dale Carnegie, another one called Activus, and another one called Krauthammer. And I used to deliver the sales training for those guys to senior managers and sales directors and sales managers. And it was always, if you're all offering the same thing, then the cheapest thing is going to win the day. And you've got to look at something that you can offer customers that not many other people are offering, or nobody else is offering. And you can command good money. Christ, I'm 70 now, and if I was a lot fitter, I'd be doing substantially more than I'm doing at the moment. Now, I'm not going to brag about this or anything, but doing work in drains and sewers, I've had a couple of jobs where we've had to repair them, reline them, as well as a CCTV survey and that. And I am clearing anywhere up to £3,000 in a day. Now, the taxman used to love me. And I would be... Lex, I've got to earn that. I run a Bentley Continental. So
most of that £3,000 a day goes just on fuel, doesn't it?
Insurance.
And insurance.
I don't run the engine at all. But there is a phenomenal amount of money to be made if you can do something different than others. If you have skills that you can offer. When I first got involved in pest control, because I'm no longer qualified, but I would be doing electrical work, replacing wiring. I'd be replacing pipe work where rats had chewed through pipe. The proviso was that it had to be associated with pest control. It couldn't be because someone wanted me to do some work because I was cheaper than an electrician. But it had to be associated with pest. And I found no one else did it because they didn't have, Part P qualification. They didn't have 17th edition IEE regulation qualification, whatever. And it was very, very good. But I don't know, 10 years ago, I packed it in. I stopped doing it. It was just, for me, it was too much hard work. Crawling around inside a loft in the middle of the summer when it's about 250 degrees. No, thank you.
No.
I don't do it.
You did get into another niche a couple of years back, didn't you? Away from the drains, away from the electricity. You started to you embraced the drones, didn't you? And you
Yes,
still
I still
do.
use drones for surveys, roof surveys. Rather than getting a ladder out and climbing up and around, I use a drone for anything. Big use I use it for is on large areas for moles. So I can program it up to go out on a 10-acre paddock or a 2 or 3 mile gallop for racehorses. Program it up, switch it on, and let it do its thing. Then come back and look at the video, and you just look at the molehills, or you can put it on a thermal. Look for anything that you want. It's just a tool in the box. And we, as pest controllers, we don't embrace technology very well.
I think that is a subject for an entire podcast by itself. I think our reticence to embrace with technology, and it's interesting. I wonder if Alan's listening in tonight. If you say hello, what his views on using technology like drones would be, because you can just imagine him flying through a field on his quad bike, can't you? Hounded instead of by collie dogs, but by little drones. The modern, the high tech mole catcher, surrounded by a little flock of drones. I think that would be quite something. And absolutely, if I go down and see him for a weekend, as I promised I would do at some point, I am absolutely going to take one of those little follow camera drones while we blitz through the mountains of Wales. But okay, so I really like the idea of drones. I've been toying with getting a drone for a while, and I have to say, just there's a lot of very conflicting information around drones out there. Some people say, don't buy drones. You can't. You can't fly them here, you can't fly them there, you can't do this, you can't do that. It all seems very complicated. You need to have an aviation license. You need to basically be, to all intents and purposes, a commercial pilot. What's the truth behind all of this? If I was to go out and buy a little drone the size of a laptop with a GoPro wireless camera stuck on the bottom of it, what is the legalities behind that? What is the what do you have to do?
Not a lot. It really
Okay.
comes down to the physical size of the drone.
Okay, so Sean's got exactly the one I was thinking of there. So let's talk through that. So for anyone that can see, Sean's got a little quadcopter drone, probably about the size when it's all folded up of I don't know, gammon.
It's that you need to look at. 249 grams.
249 grams. Okay.
If it's
ultralight, apparently
below 250 grams, it doesn't fall within the regulations.
Okay.
It falls outside of it, and you can almost do what you like.
Okay.
The downside of a lightweight drone is if it's out there blowing a hooligan or it's bucketing down with rain, you can't use your drone because it will just be blown off course. You need something a little bit bigger, a little bit more substantial. You can go, if I can get the box open, you can go ultra small. So there's one there. Just fold it all out. That's an ultra small one. You'll probably.
And so, what would you use? What would you use that ultra small one for then? What would that be? What would you put that in your pocket? What? Pardon?
Inside a warehouse.
Inside a warehouse.
Yep.
Okay.
Because this one is not governed by GPS. It's only governed by an app on your iPhone or your Android phone. And so flying it inside where there's no wind drafts or anything at all like that, it's very, very successful. The photos are what are called 720p, so very, very good resolution. You want to see where pigeons are nesting. And
yes. 30
meters tall. So how are you going to get up on the top of that beam? Well, you've got to hire a cherry picker. No, I don't. I can get my little pocket drone out and fly it up there.
Okay. So you'd use the ultralight ones for inside for doing, high high access surveys before necessarily having to fork out for the access kit.
Yeah.
So Sean's one, which is just on the border of being a regulated drone.
Yeah.
What would you use something like that for? Still inside, or would you risk sending that round for?
It depends on what model. It depends on what model it is, because some of them do rely on GPS signals to ring fence areas where you're not allowed to fly. Others don't rely on that. But because it is below 250 grams, you're not governed by the same rules as someone that's got a bigger drone, where you will necessarily you need to register it, you need to have insurance, you need some kind of a qualification. It used to be PFCO, it was originally called. That's what I've got. It's a permit for commercial operation. It means I can use it commercially. The new qualification, I'm just about to do it and upgrade mine, but basically it allows you to fly almost anywhere. There are restrictions, for example, the maximum height above ground level that you can go. It's 400 feet. But there are areas where you can go higher than that. But the drone, my larger drone that I, excuse me, that I use is regulated, and it's basically got a geo fence on it. And you start it up, press all the necessary buttons, and then it comes up on the screen. It will say, OK to take off, or it will say, restricted area 1.2 miles away, or no flying in this area. And it will not allow you to do it. Now, obviously, you've got all these guys out there from various countries that can hack into it and change it. So you can go and fly it across Heathrow if you wanted to.
Which, as a disclaimer, we do not want to do that.
And the police have got such advanced equipment that can trace drones, because they're always communicating. I mean, the larger drone that I use, it will, I can't use it for this because you have to keep it in sight. But it's got a 5 kilometer range.
Wow.
You go completely out of sight and just use the camera for navigating. And no, you're not supposed to do that. They don't like you doing that. And within the law, the usages of a drone is absolutely massive. You don't have to break all the rules and that sort of thing. And obviously, if you've got your PFCO, or the new one, the QVC, you can do pretty much what you like.
So how difficult is it to get that little bit of paper then? Is it a 1-day course? Is it a 3-day course?
It's about a week.
Okay.
And then you have to put a manual together, your flight manual, and inside there is, what you're going to do, how you do. Basically, it's like a site folder for pest control with risk assessments, method statements, and to show that you understand the rules surrounding what you're going to be flying around with.
Okay. It sounds a little bit like getting a diving qualification. Actually, you've got to when I got my SAA diving qualification, you had to put together your dive manual. You had to do a little test, and you had to prove that you were able to calculate X, Y, and Z. But with diving, you're going down and you're calculating pressure. I imagine with this, you're going up and calculating flight paths. So yeah.
It's probably more complicated, but also it's probably simpler, because if you're using a regulated drone, it will do it all for you.
It's nice to hear.
For example, if I go and use my drone, I can download the flight data, and then it shows me where I've been, and it overlays it onto Google Maps. And you can actually see where you've been. It gives you the heights, any obstructions, what you've done, the speed that you've been traveling at. It does all that lot for you. When you do your flight tests, for example, you're not allowed to use all this automation. You have to fly the drone. You can't rely on the the nearest approach alarms. You can't rely on the automatics for making it hover. You actually have to fly it, but it's not that difficult. It really isn't that difficult. You know, plenty of practice with it, and you'll crack it. But the paperwork it's pretty straightforward. If you go with a decent training company, it's ready to rock and roll, basically. They give you the manual, then it's a pro forma, and you fill in your little bits and pieces. So it's.
I like that. It's you're selling the drones to me much better than you're selling the jets of effluence, you know, from a drain. I tell you what, I'll leave the drains to Sean, and I'll take to the skies like
Right,
the.
I just see a question come up there from Sarah. Give me 1 second.
Oh, well done, Sarah.
No worries,
Scared him off. There we go.
For anybody who going back to the effluent thing, the drains. Sorry, he's back. I thought he was off to the toilet.
I know I don't need that. I've got a glass underneath the desk here. I'm fine.
Recycling.
Is that what you were drinking earlier on?
No, that's what I'll be putting back in there, though. Trust me. I'm too old to die young. So all I can suggest to everybody out there, get your prostate checked before it goes bad and they have to chop chunks out your ass. It's not pleasant, I can assure you. As I say to everybody, I know every tree on every motorway in this country intimately. Right, Sarah was asking about batteries. Well, this is going to be a little bit obvious, but it will depend on how much you use it. The little pocket drone that I showed you here, it weighs nothing. That is one of its batteries, if you can see it.
Yeah,
the
got it.
battery lasts about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If you just do things very, very gentle. And they just plug straight in on a USB connector, and you recharge, and they take about 10 or 15 minutes to charge up. Very, very quick, very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
Now, when you get onto the bigger drone, here's one oh God, that's a monster. This is a much, much bigger one. We've lost Lex.
Yeah, I think his connection's dropped out, but he'll just jump straight back in and we'll let him in.
Probably being sick thinking about drains. So this is a much, much bigger drone. He's back again.
Yeah.
The internet is the bane of my existence. I pay a fortune for it and it doesn't work. Oh, what did I miss? And what's that?
So this is a much, much bigger drone.
Okay.
With a professional camera. That, if anyone knows anything at all about cameras, that is a Hasselblad camera. You can go and buy a full frame Hasselblad camera for about 15.5 grand at the moment. This is not that one. This is this is a one and a bit each one. That camera there. There's all sorts of little bits and pieces on it for ultrasonic detection, height detection. You've got all these sensors underneath it, and they all use power. But the battery, if I take the battery, is almost all of the drone. Ooh, if I could sort of, the battery is huge. It probably weighs, I don't know, 150, 200 grams. But that battery will power this beast. That's a registration number on there. Everyone has to be registered with the CAA for using these sort of things. This drone will fly. Oh, I didn't want to switch you on. This drone will fly at about 50 miles an hour for about half an hour. You can put it in what they call sports mode, and it will do round about warp factor 3, but the battery doesn't last very long. So when you buy them, I mean, in this, I've got this bag down here. I've got a kit, and inside there's spare blades, propeller blades, there's spare batteries, there's chargers, and all sorts of things. And with all that kit, I can go out and use this particular drone all day without having to worry about charging things up. So it's horses for courses. How much you're going to use it, and depending on how much you use it will depend on how long the batteries last. But I mean, a drone like this, you're going to get no change out of £3,000, and that's not an expensive one. You get the big unique ones. I had one, but I crashed it. I broke it. But they're like £7,500, and they have 5 rotors. These smaller ones only have 4 rotors, but they're brilliant. Love them. It's a toy, and
very expensive toy. How much is it?
This one, I'd say about £2,500. But as we used to like to say, he who dies with the most toys wins.
My best friend, that's his favourite saying. The man who dies with the most toys wins. You know.
Yeah. It certainly is.
That sounds like a very that's got to be something that's come out of the army. No, sorry, Navy more likely. That's got to be a military expression, surely.
It came out from when I looked after 21 Squadron at SAS in London. They were just all nutcases.
Yes, I know some paras. One of my brother-in-law is a para. They are related. The SAS and the paras. I don't think I've ever met a single one that's fries short of a Happy Meal. They're all a little unhinged.
You've got to bear in mind with the paras, anybody that jumps out of a perfectly serviceable aircraft really needs to have their bumps read. They really do. That's just something else, part of the registration that you get. So I'm part of what's called the Drone Safe Register. It just shows I've done some exams and I've done various bits and pieces, and I'm insured, properly insured.
Oh, so here's a question for you. Throw the cat amongst the pigeons before my internet disappears again. So you've spoken several times about a couple of other industries that you've crossed over into. Plumbing, electricians, and again here with the aviation license. All of those industries licensed. Pest management, unlicensed. So go on to ask you, to put you on the spot here. Do you believe there's a value in licenses? Well, you've working for 4 industries here, 3 of which have been licensed, 1 of which is unlicensed and largely unregulated. Does there need to be licensing in pest management? Is it? I'm so sorry, but you kind of brought that up. You flashed a little card with a license on it. Of course, we're going to ask you. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, my thoughts, my experience.
That'll be better. Yes.
There was a huge change in the security industry. The government said that all bouncers, doormen, whatever you want to call them, had to be licensed. And the SIA, Security Industry Association, they came up with all the necessary bits and pieces to get everybody licensed. And it went horribly wrong. The due date where it was all came into play, there were less than 20% of the guys that had to be licensed had achieved the licensing. And the government had to backpedal, change things, do things, and it cost them a bloody fortune. Now, I sat on a certain committee, an advisory board actually, to do with pest control. Mm-hmm. And somebody mentioned about, isn't it about time that we had licenses for pest controllers? And the guy from HSE, you could smell the fear. I think he let out a bit of wee because there is no desire within the government for that to happen. It is us, the pest controllers, that would love to see it, but there's no desire. And until such a time as members of the public are informed what we do and what we have to go through to look after them, there is no justification for the government to spend money on licensing. Now, every now and again, certainly once or twice a year, you'll see adverts on the TV for what is now called the gas safe register, saying don't use, if they're not registered gas safe, do this, and here's the website, check it, and you can go and look at all the people that are registered and approved. If you go to buy a gas cooker from Curry's, other stores are available, there's a warning on there. This must be installed by a gas safe registered installer. You can buy a boiler, a gas boiler from B&Q. There's a big warning on there to be installed only by qualified gas safe registered installers. It's all over the place. Electrical is the same. The rules on electrical are exactly the same, and it's well published. So unless you've got what's called your Part P, you cannot do work in kitchens and bathrooms. Even if you are an electrician with, let's say, a level 3 qualification, unless you've got the Part P endorsement, you can't work in a kitchen or in a bathroom. It's changed now over the past couple of years, the qualifications have. And that, whilst that's not a license, it's a precursor to it in both the gas and in the electrical industry. In pest control, we don't have that.
So hang on, just let me get this right. The necessity to, let's say, install my kitchen boiler, although it says by Currys must be installed by a gas safe engineer, is that legally enforceable, or is that simply it is? So it's not a license, but it is a legislative action.
Absolutely. Okay. Same with electrical work as well. And if you look at it, it's the same with pest control. I was at a customer's house yesterday and they said, can I take this big box of rodenticide away? It was 50 parts per million bromadiolone. They bought it online. And it said on the back, you know, must be used by a professionally trained CRIU, all that good stuff. But people can still get hold of it. That notwithstanding, she read the label. She said, we're not allowed to use this. Can you take it away and dump it? And most customers, they don't know this. They don't know what us pest controllers have to do to be able to do the job. Most of them don't know the qualifications that we have to achieve. I don't know anybody that's knows anything at all about CPD, for goodness sake. Even some pest controllers are completely unaware of it until that bit came out the other day that you've got a few years before you've got to be a member of a CPD if you want to buy professional use rodenticides.
Definitely going to put the cat amongst the pigeons there. So you're saying, in your opinion, then it's less a case of bringing in a formalized license and more a case of the trade associations, crew, NPAP, the local councils, these types of governing bodies informing the general public more clearly the roles and responsibilities. You know, you, the public, are responsible for this, and everything else is the responsibility of your gas safe pest controller, so to speak. You think it's a communications thing rather than a legislative thing?
Okay, it's the same as gas safe and electrical, that you need to do the precursor, and you've got to do something to let people know that you need a bit of paper, you need a qualification, you need to do this. You can't just suddenly say, right, from tomorrow, we're going to introduce licensing for pest controllers. Members of the public will fight against it, commercially and private. They will go against it. It will be an absolute disaster, the same as the SIA license. And it needs to be, we need to do something to let people know that pest controllers, we don't all go around wearing a bib and brace with a bit of straw sticking out of our mouth. And that's
Speak
all
for
right.
yourself.
You'll get rid of them, my darling. It's much more. I mean, we've got guys out there that are bordering on geniuses, and they're just treated. I don't know. They're treated worse than double glazing salesmen by customers.
And for all of these double glazing salesmen listening right now, we hold no animosity. But I mean, Clive brings up a really good point, which is, are you suggesting a pest safe or a safe pest register?
Yes, there should be something like that to kick it off, to say that these guys are there suitably qualified. Now, there are bits and pieces out there, just little odds and ends here and there, and it's not been brought together. We've still got trade associations that they're not lined up together, let's put it that way, and they have different agendas in a lot of instances. We need a holistic approach here. We really need to get something going whereby a customer can look up on a website, not look at this guy here because he's a member of this association and this guy over here because he's a member of this association, or he's in a CPD scheme or whatever. We need to have, as was suggested, some kind of a central register for people that are qualified to do that particular job.
And I think with that, actually, that has some tremendous benefits, which is communication. I've always found in our industry is the biggest challenge. Having sat on committees and boards from here to Timbuktu for BPCA, MPTA, just about everywhere going, the biggest problem is our industry is something like 10,000 pest managers as individuals, separated probably between about 3,000 to 5,000 different companies registered in the UK. But with that, how do you talk? How do you talk to all of these people? A third of them are BPCA, a third of them MPTA, and a third of pest managers not affiliated with anyone. So how do you actually talk to the whole industry as one to try and get important information across? You really can't. So actually, potentially having something like a centralized register where you are pest manager 00001 and Sean's pest manager 00002 could be very useful, especially when it comes to, the emergency broadcast, so to speak. So what was that Pete just said? Public just don't understand the risks associated with pest control products. No, they don't. Absolutely don't. And how many, in the comments, guys, hands up now, how many people have seen daft things, and I mean daft things, people putting rat poison down in the garden, and when challenged, when you turn up and say, why are you doing that? And they're like, don't be silly. This is rat poison. It kills rats, not birds. And you're like, how divorced from reality are you? You only have to. So you, John, do you remember Paul Butt? Do you remember Paul from Natural England?
Yeah, I do.
Yes. Some of the stories that Paul used to tell. So those who remember will remember Paul, and those who don't, I'll tell you a little bit about. But Paul Butt was from Natural England, and he was the self-appointed guard dog, watchdog, attack dog to our industry, for our industry, and at our industry a lot of the time as well. And there was never any malice in what he did, but he rooted out bad practice and he rooted out misuse and abuse. And he actually brought these cases to court, which is something we haven't seen from Natural England in this case for some time. But he used to give a talk at Pestex, he used to give a talk at Pest Tech, he used to basically be on all the circuits. And the talk was nothing more than him just standing there with a screen behind him and about 50 pictures of the terrifying things he'd found so far this year, ranging from people with tins of Cymag just sat half propped on, half propped off a shelf with the lid half on, to just stockpiles of strychnine and all kinds of things like that. He had some fantastic stories, didn't he, John?
He did. The one I liked was, in particular, he told it numerous times in numerous ways about Cymag, and how
Yep.
people would use it. And it just, I mean, I've used tons of the bloody stuff. When I was at sea, chucking it in the holds to fumigate them. But it was just amazing. And he had a photograph. It was a guy in a Land Rover, a farmer in a Land Rover, and in the slot in front of the passenger seat were 2 tubs of Cymag just sat in there. Just absolutely rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. They just didn't understand it. They weren't worried. Love it. Those were the days.
Absolutely. Yeah, uncharacteristically quiet, isn't he? This is
I just haven't had a chance. I'm just sitting listening. I'm just quite enjoying it. I'm just being a spectator for the night. It's quite nice to just sit and listen. And my opinions will, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I was talking to John earlier, and I was saying it's funny you come on, you have to talk about. Everyone does it. They come on to talk about rat valves and drains, and they end up talking about drones and licensing. David Helgelsill come on to talk about rat pack, and you end up talking about woodworm and death watch beetle. So it's no surprise. So it's just a nice, interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a Scottish saying, isn't it, which is from is it Robert Steinbeck? The best laid plans of mice and men gan after glay. Basically means you can make a plan, it's going to go to shit. So you may as well. And he's off again. He's gone. He's done it.
Shouting at the missus, isn't he?
He is, yes. So go on, Sean. I've dominated this.
Yeah, no, I think
ask John a couple of questions.
I don't know. I think we need to get him back on to talk about rat valves and drains and stuff like that, because it would be wrong to sum it up quickly. I've thoroughly enjoyed your input. It's interesting.
Little questions there about rat flaps. Hang on. Yeah. Can I make a cider, please?
Get your orders in.
There's been a couple of people just see a few questions pop up on the screen about rat flaps. And there's been all sorts of posts on rat flaps. And I mean, time's getting on, I suppose, but I just think it's worthwhile mentioning about rat flaps. There are a lot of people that say you should never fit them. You should always fix the pipe first. And they dismiss the use of the one-way valves. Well,
Sean,
I'm one of them. Yeah, I'm one of them. So, but this is the good thing about this, because we get to bring in different people with different thought processes. Hello, young lady.
I sent you a text.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem with pipes going into domestic or indeed commercial properties, you should always try and repair the pipes. And I repair lots of pipes. But I also get calls to a number of properties, and it's becoming more and more so, where they've got a rat in the toilet. There's no fault in the pipe work. The rat's come up and swum up inside the car scene. There it is, bobbing around in the bowl. I went to one just over a week ago. Poor old lady in a bungalow, and she'd put a plant pot on top of the lid, and it's bouncing up and down like that. And she said, can you help? And I went, yeah, I'll be round there in 2 minutes. It was only about 5 miles down the road. Went round there, sorted it out. And as I'm pulling this rat out, I've got a pair of grippers. I've got the rat in a gripper. And as I'm going out of her little bathroom, she's pushing away. She was not a small woman. She's pushing away past me. The rat's giving it some of that at her. And as she came in, I'm shutting the door. She's getting her knickers down. She was desperate to go to the toilet. And there's nothing that you can do. There is no repair work. You've got to fit a rat flap, because if they found a way in, they're going to keep on doing it. But you've got to make sure that it's a decent enough rat flap. You can't just shove anything up there.
So what makes a good rat flap then? So you say a decent enough rat flap. There are many rat flaps out on the market. We've seen them. Almost all of the distributors have their own version that they champion. And of course, I think this might be your shameless plug. You too champion a rat flap. So what makes a good rat flap then?
The material
Okay.
and the thickness of the material. So, hey, Philip. A lot of people, originally rat flaps were plastic. They were not rat flaps. They were to stop back flushing of sewage going up. And in certain places, I was doing a job for a guy up at Hebden Bridge, and they had these huge cast iron one-way valves, not to stop the rats, but it's to stop the river and the canal backwashing into properties. In London, if you go on a trip down the Thames, you will see where the quay sides are. You'll see these great big pipes with huge cast iron flaps over them to stop back flushing. They're not used that much, but if you go further up, you'll find out it looks like a manhole cover with about a squillion bolts in the top of it. Open it up, there's a one-way valve in there to stop back flushing. To make something cheaper, they came up with plastic ones. I'm sure you've seen them. They're these red and blue plastic ones the rats chew through in 2 seconds. They were not designed as rat flaps. They were designed to stop back flushing, but someone had the great idea that it would help to stop rats. Not very good. But a lot of guys...
Very briefly. Yeah.
Yep. Hey?
I said they stopped them very briefly.
Oh, yeah.
Not much. Yeah.
Well, a lot of guys got involved in making their own in their garden shed. Here's one. This was a local guy, so it's a bit of a bit of a connector, a pan connector, a little bit of very thin stainless steel pipe, and he's got a stainless steel hinge which he's welded on. If you look at it carefully, you can see it's all rusting because the stainless steel is a piece of crap. And it can only go in one way, and as soon as it's tilted a little bit, it opens.
It's a big gap. Yeah,
an absolute nightmare. And he was selling these locally for 60 quid each, and he was knocking. He sold quite a few. He doesn't do it anymore because he came out with Mark II. This is the Mark II model, all stainless steel. It looks good until you look at this bit here, and it's because it's cheap and nasty stainless steel. It's all rusted away. I mean, it doesn't look very professional, does it, at the end of the day? And you can get hold of it and you can squidge it. It's like a biscuit tin. And he was knocking these out for £80 each. I'm all for entrepreneurs, but that's taking the P. But then you get a company came out with these ones.
Yeah, that looks a little more familiar now, doesn't it?
These are extremely robust. They're very, very strong, incredibly strong. To bend it, it's bloody impossible. And they're made out of very good quality steel. You can see the flap in there. Absolutely perfect. But if you want to install this in any other way than the flow going that way, so the flap opens, you've got to take all of this off. You've got a little tiny bolt there that you've got to take out on the hinge. You've got to then turn the flap around the other way and bolt it all back together. It takes time. The actual instructions that come with this particular one, it says it's factory configured to work with a chamber outlet that can be reconfigured to protect the chamber inlet. Using a 2.5mm Allen key. Have you seen the size of those tiny little screws? It's -3 outside. You've got 2.5mm, and you drop them down the drain every single bloody time. So it's not practical for turning it around. Now, the guys that came up with this one, they came to me for advice on design, and I did get them to change something, but it's still not good enough. They've got this thing, this A-frame on the top, and you tighten this bolt up, and the idea is that it compresses it, and then you release that off and it springs back out again. I can assure you it doesn't work very good. You've got to have the strength of bloody Hercules to make any real serious difference. But where this falls on its arse is if you've got a chamber. Here's one I prepared earlier. There's a chamber, typical PVC chamber.
As you do, again, for those who are listening without the video, John has just from literally underneath his chair pulled a manifold, drain manifold.
It's called a riser chamber.
Just as you do.
Now, this is another visual thing. At the bottom of the manhole, you've got, it's like a half pipe, a semicircular pipe. The PVC ones are semicircular. The ones that are made of clay pipes or concrete pipes or salt glazed or the rather nice ones that are made out of porcelain, they're not always half a pipe. And the benching, instead of being a nice half like that, it comes over. Unfortunately, if you haven't got video, you won't see this, but those that are coming on my training course next month will actually be able to try this themselves. So this is to simulate the bottom. Now you can't imagine that's the wall there, and you've got to get this rat flap inside. And so what you do is it goes in here and you slide it in. Absolutely bloody marvelous. Right, let's go for something that's not quite so modern. Let's go back to something that's not using 4-inch pipe, but 3 7/8 pipe, or the cement has come over, so you've got a little bit of a This will not fit in there. You cannot get it in because of the physical size.
Okay.
It just will not fit. Now you can slide it in here, but bearing in mind that's the wall, so you can't slide it in. So this is probably the most robust one out there that is available, but it's got serious limitations. It really does.
I'm waiting for it now. What is the solution? What is the solution, John?
Well, there's lots that are available there, all of a sort of a similar design. This particular one is no longer manufactured because they got a cease and desist order because they were copying someone else's, which was absolute rubbish, but they bounced back as a different name and they made a slight change to it. But this, once again, it's made out of not too bad steel. But the good thing about these ones is the flap goes like that. If you turn it around and slide it in the pipe, the flap goes that way as well. So you don't have to take it apart. The problem with these is there's nothing holding it in the pipe other than the friction of the outside surface of the wall. And they can be displaced. One of the large manufacturers out there, they sell these things. This is the Generation 2 one. The first ones that they were selling at this bit here, they had a long handle sticking out. And in order to put it in the opposite way, you had to take the flap off, turn it around and put it back in again. Now they've changed the design to this one. Nothing can get through, everything can come. You want flow the different way, turn it around and it works fine. It's just they're very expensive for what they are. They're made in Ireland. Don't have a problem with them. And then there's this one here. This is one that I actually flog. The material is about twice as thick as this one here from one of the major distributors. This one works the same. That bolt is there for fitting it in a deep chamber. And rather than spending 40 quid on an extension pole, if someone wants to use an extension pole and they tell me, or they've got an existing one from this same distribution company, I will give them one of these. And that's a little converter that I knock up. It's got a 10mm nut one side and a 12mm nut the other side. And it just screws on there. If they haven't got an existing pole, well, all you do is you buy a bit of 20mm black enamel conduit. It's about £3 for a 3 metre length. And it comes with a socket on the end. And all I do is I'll weld 2 10mm nuts on there with my MIG welder. And then they screw that on the end, and they've now got a 3 metre long pole for fitting this particular one. And this one is exactly the same. It can go around any way that you like, because you just turn it around. But where this one is slightly different is, I keep forgetting that camera's backwards. You've got these bits that are cut. You can just see the perforations, and you can bend them out. And placed a bit like a barb. The other thing is that here in Swindon, we've got an organisation called WRC, Water Research Council. And I'm very lucky because I've got a couple of guys that I know that work there. And so I got them to get this one and run a test on it. Now, I'm not going to pay for certification myself. I'm a nobody. But it's a possibility that they could do if they wanted. And they said that one of these, when properly fitted, will cause no more than 1.8% loss of flow in a 4-inch pipe or 110mm pipe. It is negligible. A poorly made joint on a PVC pipe normally is about 3 to 5%. This particular one is negligible. And to be quite honest, this one's going to be the same. This one here from one of the big distributors is going to be exactly the same. It will not. Where the problems exist, and I haven't got one, is when you get these ones that have got the serrations on the flap. It's a bit like fly fishing. Flies actually catch fishermen. They don't catch many trout. You can catch trout with a bent pin. And it's the same with the serrations on the outside. They catch pest controllers because they look more aggressive, or customers think they're more aggressive. All they do is trap stuff. And despite the fact you give all the written information to say you can't flush this, you can't flush that, they should carry on doing it. Customers won't tell you the truth. Well, I never put that down there. When you go back,
have you not been tempted to sort of because it would only take one pebble to start that avalanche, to actually sort of like go out and get it tested and get that number, instead of being an anecdotal, they tell me it's a 0.14 reduction. Actually get it, get it stamped on your box.
It's the
money.
How
much money?
It's about 90 grand.
Oh, I'll do it. I'll do it for 50 grand. I'll just get 2 bits of pipe and I can measure flow speed down it. I can put all bits of crap down that pipe. 90 grand.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
90 grand for a full, and that's for testing the full range of rat flaps. It's ludicrous.
I am definitely in the wrong line of testing. 90 grand. Christ alive.
Same rodenticides when you got to get them authorised. Look how much you got to pay for that.
Yes, but that's apples and oranges, I think, absolutely. But before I start cracking on about rodenticide testing, because we all know that I'd do that all night, Clive brought up a good question, and I'm just going to throw Sean under the bus here, because he's been too quiet, hasn't he, guys? Just everyone in the comments now, just please agree.
I'm just
with me.
enjoying
Sean
listening. I'll leave that question up. Yeah. So, why? I'm not necessarily against the use of rat flaps, and certainly, as John described, if it was coming through the toilet, your hands are tied. But the truth is, I've only ever had that through dry toilets. I've never had it through wet, and I think you could probably put them off by just putting the lid down, but if we take that out the way, the problem that I see with rat flaps is that people use them as an alternative to doing a drain survey. So I'm guessing, and John might say he doesn't, but I'm guessing John will fit a rat flap after the drain survey, because what I find is that a lot of lads will realise it's the drains. They don't have the capabilities to do the survey. So then what they'll say is, well, we'll put a rat flap in, and it's a bit like stick a pin in and hope you hit, because they don't know where the fault is. And then it leaves in my opinion, it leaves the person who fits the rat flap, in a very precarious position. So say, for instance, I don't know, the fault is the line is redundant and it's open and it's going into the base of the house, and they fit a rat flap. There's a blockage, whether it's associated to the rat flap or not. The house then ends up full of sewage. Who do you think's getting the blame for that?
Well, that's definitely good management.
Yeah. So we will always do the survey. We would never fit a rat flap without doing a survey. And I find that 99% of the people who fit rat flaps do it as an alternative to a survey. Or they do an incomplete survey. They can't get the survey done. They get so far up that they don't have the right camera. They don't have the right kit. They can't get there. And then they go, well, we've done a survey. We think it's up there. And they'll bang a rat flap in. And they are absolutely, in my opinion, leaving themselves open, like massively open to major issues. And I know that in the drainage industry, they worry massively about insurance claims, because usually what happens is if you've got raw sewage in your house, the insurance company will move the people in the house out. They'll put them up in a hotel, etc., and that bill's coming your way, like without a shadow of a doubt. The drainage companies are like proper panicky over it. So we just don't fit them. I am a believer that if you have a problem, you fix the problem. But and the other thing, of course, is, which I'd love John to talk about, is incorrect fitting, because I see one today on Facebook. The flap is sitting tight against the base of the half round. It's tight as a tick, and you're sitting there thinking, oh no, and they're like, don't worry, we've got this problem solved. So John, fitting, and I think you've got some photos on fitting, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got some pictures. I'll shove them up in a second, but
yeah,
a rat flap. The rat flap will stop rats entering a pipe. A rat flap will not fix or cure a broken pipe or a leak. Now, when we do a survey, and this is because they've got a leak, something's wrong. I'm not talking about a rat coming up through the toilet. We do the necessary survey with a camera, take videos. We don't do stills. And in general, we don't do a WRC survey because they're totally meaningless to the average member of the public. In pretty much the same way as an MSDS bit of paper, you give it to someone in a domestic situation, they go to sleep. So we do a full survey with videos and a running commentary of what we find, with a view that we're going to get the work to repair the pipe. Now, it's up to whoever's doing it to give them the necessary documentation.
Yeah.
It's no different than using rodenticide. You don't just chuck down trays of rodenticide and walk away. You've got to tell them where it is, what you've used. Otherwise, you're going to be liable. And it's no different when you're working on a drainage system. And one of the things that we're quite good at in our industry is giving the necessary information to people. And when you fit a rat flap, when I fit a rat flap, it is because there's a hole in the pipe and they want a bit of respite. So we explain, this is what needs doing. We need to repair the pipe work. We need to do whatever's necessary. But as a temporary measure, I will loan you a rat flap, which we will remove when we repair the pipe. They're not designed to be a permanent fitting. You've got lots of guys out there seeing this as an easy money-making exercise. So they go and buy a camera for 500 quid off of eBay or somewhere like that. They do a survey and they say, oh, look, missus, you've got a hole in your pipe. Okay, when can you fix it? Oh, I can't fix it. I haven't got all the gear. You need to get in touch with a drainage company. And the drainage company comes out and the woman says, oh, I've got a survey here that oh no, we don't accept that. We'll do our own. And rightly so. I wouldn't accept anyone else's because their distances could be wrong. So they're going to redo it. And you're wasting your time doing that sort of thing. You need to, if you can't do it yourself, you need to team up with someone that can do it on a subcontract basis. But a rat flap is not a permanent solution if there is a fault in the pipework. And it's as simple as that. You've got to give them all the paperwork. No wet wipes, no cotton buds, no makeup removal pads. All this stuff must not be flushed down the Kazi. And if you give them that information, you're done.
Do you know that this is the thing, isn't it? As a pest controller, they want that solution. And I think when you're a one-man band, it's very difficult, especially when you first start, to turn around to someone and say, hey, say you're going to put a rat flap in. I'm going to put this in, but the responsibility lies with you. I'm telling you that this is not the right solution. It's a short-term solution, and that this is on your shoulders. Because what you want to do when you first start is, don't worry, we'll solve this. We're brilliant. And you've seen them in the manual, so you pick them up, you put them in, But you're absolutely right. That disclaimer is the most important thing that you're ever going to write when you fit one, isn't it?
Got to give them the paperwork. You cannot take on liabilities for things that you may not be able to do anything at all about. It's as simple as that.
Can you, or would you, put a rat flap in a shared drain chamber?
Depends on where. Come on my course in February and you'll get to fit it.
Well, you're going to get a chance to give a shameless plug at the end, so yeah.
But yes, where you can and you can't fit things is varied. But the bottom line is you can only fit it in a drain. End of. What's the difference between a drain and a sewer? I haven't got the time to go through it all. But it can only be fitted in a drain, and that's it. End of story. You can't fit it anywhere else.
And of course, the water authority do not like it if you put it in their property.
If it goes in their manhole, right. Once again, it depends. I fit loads on sewers. I fit loads in mains, but I've got a very, very healthy working relationship with Thames Water because I used to train their sewage guys in sewage treatment, and they're fine, even to the point whereby they'll give me permission for repairing their pipes that are having an impact on a customer. They'd sooner me go ahead and do it rather than them paying for it and causing all sorts of nightmares. But you have to be aware. You can only work on what belongs to the customer. If you've got rats coming in through a wall from the property next door, you can't go into that house next door without their permission. And it's no different in drains and sewers. You can only work on what belongs to that customer. You've got to be very careful of that.
But if they come on your course, they will learn what they can, where they can and where they can't.
They'll get to physically do it. It's a practical course that I do, Sean. They get to play with cameras. They get to see how to actually repair pipes. I set the system up so that, here's a pipe, it's got a hole in it. This is how you repair it. And they physically get to do everything. There's a little bit of death by PowerPoint for an hour or so, but the rest of it, get in there, here's a sewage system, play with it. And it's a clean sewage system because the next one I'm running is actually in a pub in their function room. So I build a sewage system using all these bits that you're seeing around here, and they get to actually play with it. And I also give them all the necessary documentation, should they want it, to do with building over manholes, health and safety, WRC survey, just the whole thing. There's a load of documentation that goes with it.
Well, there you go. You just got T's Pest Quest here. Sign me up. He's coming down for it.
I've got one guy from bloody Aberdeen coming down.
Yeah, Stuart must be getting keen.
I've got some pictures, which, if we share the screen, I think it might be interesting, and I can describe exactly what it's all about. So if we start with, here's some repairs. And this is a typical repair. It's not something that is easy to do. It was they were going to build an extension on this property, and they put a concrete pad down and changed their mind. And it sat there for a few years, but they had a hole. We found the hole in the pipe using CCTV. Now, how are we going to gain access to it? So what we did, hopefully you'll be able to see this picture, use a concrete saw. I've got a steel saw, and dug out the concrete on where we thought the hole would be. So that's all cut out. We then dug down, and there's the pipe. And if you look carefully here where my pointer is, you can actually see a hole in the clay pipe.
Yeah.
And then that's the lintel. That's the rest of the pipe. And you can see how mucky and muddy it is. This has been going on for years. The rats were coming out of the pipe and going into the property underneath there. So what we did, you can see that's the hole there, and that's the lintel where they were going in and out of. It's a bit wet there because obviously, despite the fact you tell their children, please don't go to the toilet, there's always going to be one little bugger that goes in and has a dump and it comes floating down.
This is just quickly, this is exactly what I was saying about there. If you bring that picture back up, like, people don't realize where you cause a blockage in that house, you've got a hole under that lintel. If that lintel is floating, if that makes sense,
yeah.
If that blocks up with shit, you've got shit in the base of your house, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. It just, because of the slope on the floor, it was going in there. And then if we look at the next picture, what we did was we cut the elbow out. So that's this one down the bottom here is from the house, and that goes towards the manhole. So we cut it out. We've got a couple of AC110s. These are rubber connectors. They go from 4-inch clay to 4-inch PVC. We put an elbow in with the two connectors, bolted it all up, put the necessary rubble back in there, and Bob's your uncle, cemented it all back up again. A perfect repair. And that's just a one that was just a little bit off the wall. And if we look at oh bugger, just have a look at these. So this is a still taken from a CCTV image, and you can see here where this pipe is underneath their floor. You can see there's like a half moon here, and the pipe had been displaced. And it'd been like that for ages, and they kept on complaining that they could smell poo in the house. And for about this is a brand new house, by the way, and they'd lived there for 2 years in a new house. And no one found what the fault was. It was just displaced over. So here's a little bit of a close-up on it. And you can see, look, all that doo-doo that's in that bit of pipe, but it's all going underneath here. You can see loo roll and all sorts. And there was tons underneath the floor. We must have used 100 gallons of disinfectant to get in it. But this is a rat flap will stop the rats, but the poo's still going underneath the floor, for goodness sake. You've got to fix the pipe.
Yeah. I think this is the one thing I would say is when you show this to a customer, say, here is your issue, this is why your house stinks, or this is the downside, getting that repair done becomes a lot more important to them. When you've just put a rat valve in and you've stopped the rats, then it's not, as far as they're concerned, out of sight, out of mind, isn't it? So the importance of the survey, in my eyes, if you're a professional, you're trying to give, what would you want done in your house? I was using my house principle. Like, what would you want done in your house? I would want someone to come in and find that. That's the way I look at it. So I think, don't just bang rat flaps in, cross your fingers and hope for the best.
This was another job where a pest controller had been in previous to us, and to stop the rats coming in, they'd fit a rat flap. and it had stopped the rats, but they were still complaining about damp in the property. Now, if you look at the size of this hole, you could probably, well, maybe not me because I'm a bit of a fat bugger, but someone a little bit skinny could probably get through that hole, never mind the rats. But all their foul water from the sink, the bath, the shower, the toilets, there was 3 toilets in this place, was all going underneath their floor. Now, you've got the nasty smells and that sort of thing, but what you also had was damp, and damp was going up the wall. And this was where it was from. And that's a typical one. You will not fix a hole in the pipe with a bloody rat flap. They have a purpose.
I'm going to be honest with you. When you say damp riding up the wall, I think we need to be very clear that damp is probably a very polite way of saying shit. That literally, it's just got to be at that point. That's just effluent just moving up there. Yeah, well, we're coming up to an hour and a half now, John. That's absolutely incredible. I mean, I don't know where the time has gone because it feels like we could genuinely be doing this all night. And I can see here you've got hundreds of photos on this. So I'll tell you what, share us your favorite horror story with us now as a bit of a parting disc. Yeah.
Well, just before I disappear, what I want to do is show you this. It was a repair that we did in a deep sewer. And when I was speaking with Sean, he was telling me about a matey boy up at
yes, please.
Was not very well because he crawled inside a manhole chamber.
Yes, absolutely.
The gases down there, apart from the smell, the gases down there, it's not just methane. One of the things that people go on about is testing sewers with smoke bombs. And you light it and you drop it in a sewer. Bugger me, there's methane in there, for goodness sake. Next thing you know, anti-flow's been blown off the Kazi through the roof.
Now, I have to say, I'm just going to break in here quickly, John, because irritatingly enough, you've given the RSPH Level 2 certificate and award, so have I, and you know fully well that actually one of their test questions is, how do you search for defects in a drain when not using a CCTV camera? And it's still on their syllabus as using smoke generators is the right answer. And if that question comes up in an exam, you have to sit there and say, use smoke generators. And yet in every single lecture I do, like, use a smoke generator, but beware, you are probably going to blow yourself and 2 buildings up when you do. It's a joke, isn't it?
When I used to sit on the review board at RSPH, problem questions, and I always brought this question up as a problem, and I was always shot down in flames by a certain chap from a distribution company who he probably knew as much about pest control as my granddaughter knows about astrophysics, but he worked for a major distribution company. But this is just a few pictures. This was actually in London. It's a deep sewer. This thing was about 18 foot deep. So an extreme case. And this is some of the stuff that we have. So you've got air ducting. You've got a fan. That fan was 20 meters away. So you're making sure you're chucking in fresh air. And then this is the discharge pipe that goes all the way down into the manhole chamber. So you're constantly putting in fresh air. You're not trying to suck it out because you could draw noxious gases from other branches that are in there. So you're trying to displace what's ever in there with fresh air from above ground. Highly questionable in London, mind you, with the pollution, but hey, you do your best. So where's the little button? There. So this is it dropping down. You can actually see how deep that sewer is. Goes down a long way.
Oh my God.
Right. How are you going to get down there? There's little footsteps. But if whoever's down there has an issue, how are you going to get them out? So what you do is you have this. It's called a rescue tripod. And the device at the top, the blue thing at the top, it's a steel wire that will lift 300 kilos and it's sprung loaded. So you put it onto free running, and it's hooked on to a safety harness for whoever's going down there. And they can move around quite easily. But if anything goes pear-shaped, you can lock it and you can wind them back up. So what's this? Well, you've got here, this is a multimeter. It detects lack of oxygen and it detects explosive gases. And this is body worn by the person that's going down there. Now, you could have something go seriously wrong, and it means that someone on the rescue side has now got to go down there. So this orange thing's a PP10. This is actually an air bottle, mask, and control gear. It only lasts about 15 minutes, and it's got alarms on there once the tank starts to get low. And it's just an emergency device. You only use it when it's really things have gone pear-shaped, but you need it there when you're working. And then there's my son-in-law. He's heavily into his bondage. So you can see there, he's got the gas detector mounted on the belt. That is a brand new harness. Any time that we work where there is a risk of falling or you need to be pulled out, we want a new harness. Once it's been used, it's sent away, it's tested, and it comes back to say yes, pass, or no, bin it. So that's him. You can see the wires connected on. As he's going down, he's got the full breathing apparatus on, and on he goes down there. Now you can see here, in order for him to get into the chamber, the pipe supplying fresh air is removed. But once he's in there, you put it back in again. But bear in mind, he is wearing a detector which will detect lack of oxygen or explosive atmospheres. So that's him on his way down. I've got loads more photographs that are very interesting at the end of the day.
I think the point to make on that is, for anybody watching this, it would almost seem like overkill. But it's right to point out that every year they say that if they get one death in the trades, they'll get two, because it's usually the bloke who's in there and his pal who goes in to get him out, because they get so overwhelmed with that gas. So this isn't like someone died in 1960. This is something that does happen on a semi-regular basis. So, and it is important, if you're going to be dropping into these deep manholes, that you absolutely know what you're doing, isn't it?
It'll probably be difficult to see, but when I was a jolly sailor, difficult to see that ship.
If we take your main off there, we might be able to see a bit better then. Hang on.
Over there. So you can see there, big hole in that ship.
Yep.
And then
Bloody Germans.
That was her sister ship. She was in the Guinness Book of Records as the largest loss of ship. Here's another picture of the Mactra with the same hole in there. And what had happened there was that someone was working in the tanks, which had vapor in there from crude oil, and they dropped a spanner. Now that ship is 50 meters from top to bottom, from the deck to the bottom. So off he went into this tank. No BA, no nothing at all. And the fellow went a little bit doolally because the fumes got to him. And he needed to get out, but he needed a cigarette. So he lit a cigarette. And it killed 15 fellas. And my mate's missus, she got really badly burned on that ship. The other one, the Marpessa, she sank. Same situation, cleaning the tanks, it exploded. There is no excuse, guys, for what we do not to have the right equipment. You've got to have gloves on when we're doing the necessary bits and pieces. And if you're going to get messed about in drains and sewers, the diseases, the pathogens that are down there. You know, that second-hand curry that comes down from Old Town in Swindon, it's not just our old second-hand curry. There's all sorts in there. And the other thing that I teach when I do this for, or I used to, I don't do it anymore, but for water companies, is that we are in a multicultural society. And what is inside a drain and a sewer is human waste. And if you've got someone that's just returned from some country in the middle of, I don't know, India, Malaysia, somewhere like that, they could have dysentery, they could have cholera, and that's all floating past you. And if you haven't got the necessary stuff, you're in trouble. So don't take it lightly. So if you take nothing away from this, take this away. A rat flap is not a permanent solution. A repair of a pipe is. But rat flaps have a place in our arsenal. They're an excellent temporary solution. Make sure you've got the necessary PPE, even if it's only in a little drain that's 2 foot deep. Proper gloves, some kind of a face shield. I wear a face shield. I don't wear a mask, but some kind of a face shield. Make sure that the customer's not going to use the Kasi when you've got your head down there. There's nothing worse than them rubsters floating past you. It's
all the neighbours as well.
It is. It's bloody nasty sometimes. And watch out for the kids, because they think it's funny to go and have a pee down there when you're when you're having a go.
And it's equally funny to put the. Oh, sorry. What did you say, Sean?
When you ping that up, I was just about to say, do you want to do the last 3 out, or do you want to go you, me, you?
Go on. We'll take it in turns. It seems to be more fun that way. You go first.
Yeah. Ready for it to come around. First question is: have you enjoyed your time on the podcast? He's nodding.
Yes.
He's nodding.
I have to think about it.
Did you need your tin hat, body armor, and big boy pants?
I didn't need my big boy pants, no.
Oh, excellent stuff. So I'll take the next one then. Come on, give us a shameless plug. One thing to plug. What would you like to plug?
Get the necessary information before you start having a go at people.
No.
Okay.
Give us a plug. Give us a plug.
Sell us something.
I'm going to plug the drain course that I do. It is a practical course. It's not sitting in a classroom, me showing you slides of all the faults I've done and how good I am at doing it. If you attend the course, you're going to be getting in the sewer, you're going to be doing it, you're going to be using the camera, you're going to be looking for faults to find out what's going on, and it will be not marked, it will be critiqued by me and all the other guys as well. And I only keep it to small numbers so that we can have a little bit of the old one-on-one and active discussions rather than 20 people sitting around watching a PowerPoint presentation, because I just want to do a Spider-Man and slash my wrists when it's too much like that. But it's a very practical thing. The next one I'm running is towards the end of February in Swindon, and I'm organising one. I'm hoping it's going to be in Chester, if I can get the necessary stuff put together for that one.
Excellent. And who would you like to see on the podcast?
Me, Alan.
Yeah, who would you like to see on?
Alan Buckle.
He's stepping down from crew. I mean, I can ask Alan. I know Alan. I've known Alan for a while, but I think I doubt he'll come on. He may come on though. He's got he's stepping back from crew, of course, as we all know, and I think his last day is in the next couple of months. He may very well come on. He may just come on to set the world to rights when he has no more stake in it. So I don't know. I'll ask. I'll see if he wants to come on the podcast. It should be a good one.
Yeah.
And then next week, Lex, do you want to tell us who's coming on next week? Because you've organised that one, haven't you? It'll be a whole different conversation next week, which you'll probably enjoy, John.
It really will. So some of you who are on my LinkedIn, or some of you who are watching on my LinkedIn, will know that I actually went on another podcast. I went on another podcast a couple of weeks back, and it was aired this week. It was the Coast to Coast podcast run by two fantastic American gentlemen, Andy and Gabe, and one situated on one coast and one situated on the other coast, as you might imagine, hence the name. And we were talking all things technology and pest management, but they very kindly agreed to join us next week on Beauties and Beasties, where we're going to chat to them about the difference between how we do things and how they do things. Because I think one of the things that blows Sean's mind, and we talk about this a lot in the Pest Managers networking meeting, is how Americans, so there's some American companies out there who, when they do pest control, they don't even go inside the house. They don't even really get out the van. Their pest management is to spray the outside of the house from top to bottom with insecticides from a pressure washer, pressure sprayer. And that's it. That is their pest control for the year, because anything landing on that house instantly bursts into flames. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation next week with us and the guys from Coast to Coast Pest Talk, because it's going to be really exciting. So everyone have to think of some questions. Think of some questions to ask these guys. Everything you've ever wanted to know about pest control about the States, because I'm fairly certain there's going to be some really interesting misconceptions on both sides of the pond here as to how we do things. So definitely join us for that one. It's going to be really, really good fun. So yeah, there we go. You can tell I'm excited, can't you?
Yeah, it'll be a whole different kettle of fish, won't it?
It will be. We're going to be, away from that. John, I'm not sure if you can see the comments, but literally for the last 2 minutes while I've been prattling away, it has been just a huge amount of love and praise for you tonight. So thank you ever so much for joining us.
Loved every minute of it. If I can help everybody to pick up a bit of extra knowledge, then that makes my day.
Oh, that's so
Brilliant.
good. We really, really like that. Well, with that, I think we're going to run the credits. Everyone watching, thank you ever so much. And again, like, share, comment, keep the conversation going even after we're gone. So, thank you very much, guys. And
I'm not going to drink more cider.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.